I'm delighted to say that we have a mix of industries on our panelists, and I will be kind of trying to give ourselves some insight on the commonalities and also things that are different in terms of how compliance is driven across different industries, and particularly with that word culture, which actually popped up a number of times in the previous session. But without further ado, what I want to do is just give our panelists a chance to introduce themselves. So I think, as it makes sense, we'll start at Sophie's end and we'll work our way down and we'll finish up at Neil. Okay?
Good afternoon, I'm Sophie Dupré-Echeverria. I'm the Chief Risk and Compliance Officer at GRB Asset Management. That's a trading brand for Gulf International Bank, and we're based in fashionable Mayfair in London. Across all the years that I have been a risk professional, I have worked for big institutions like Citi and UBS, but Gulf International Bank is a smaller one, and therefore I hope that I will be bringing the more practitioner, small firm perspective to this panel. We are just over 100 people focused on sustainability in asset management.
Hello everybody, I'm Peter Funk. I'm the head of GRC at the Swedish Transport Administration. It's a government administration managing all the roads and the railways in Sweden, both from building the infrastructure and maintaining the infrastructure. It's a pretty interesting risk exposure we have. I kind of say that it's interesting that people die in our infrastructure, from our infrastructure, but also we have issues of challenges also when building the infrastructure. And now, for the last 2 years, we also have the new threats coming from Eastern Europe. So it's a very interesting business.
Thank you, Peter. Phil?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone, again. And for those that weren't in the last session, apart from shame on you, I'm Phil Crook. I'm the head of compliance at Nationwide Building Society. So Nationwide Building Society, for those that don't know, is a retail-based, UK-based financial services firm. Organising vanilla banking products, I suppose, for retail customers within the UK. And unlike Sophie being based in fashionable Mayfair, we are based in Swindon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Phil. And last but not least, Niall.
Thanks, John. First and foremost, I would like to first thank the organizer for this great event and for having me here together with this esteemed panelist. My name is Nael. I'm from Petronas, working for Petronas. My background is actually actuarial mathematics, and then my master's in business. But currently in Petronas, I work in legal division. Quite contradictory. So a little bit about Petronas. I mentioned to John that I would like to give a little bit of context about our organization. So Petronas, we started off as a national oil company in Malaysia. And then after a few decades, we actually ventured internationally. Hence, we sort of became the international oil company. Quite relatively recent, we repositioned into some diversification, energy. Hence, we do have a target to have our revenue, 30% of our revenue from our non-traditional business. We try to diversify our business to stay relevant and we continue to exist. The organization, Petronas itself, where I come from, is actually the ultimate parent company, meaning I think the context is slightly different to some of the organizations here, meaning there are more than 500 subsidiaries within the group. Hence, the compliance program, the risk perspective that I am looking at is from the ultimate parent company. We design the compliance framework and compliance programs from the parent company, and then we roll it out to our hundreds of subsidiaries. Our compliance officers do not reside at the subsidiaries, actually. They all reside at the parent holding company. Yeah. So I think my sharing later would be about the challenges, the issues of how the perspective, the challenges from the corporate side, from the HQ, rolling out to the subsidiaries where we operate within upstream, downstream gas at various countries, more than 50 countries, various jurisdictions.
I think that adds a fascinating mix to the topic itself, so thank you, Niall, for that introduction. So let's kick off. I suppose from the underpinning of the discussion, strategy is foremost. Your experience personally from that strategy is kind of what I'm sure both myself and those in the audience would like to listen to. So building a compliance resilience and the strategy that underpins that. Phil, can you kind of talk us through your kind of experience thus far? You know, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, and it's an interesting question. So, I think it's tempting. So we're here to talk about the 4 Cs, and I think it's quite tempting for firms that are really heavily regulated, like a UK retail financial services firm is, to be quite almost a 5th C around complacent, actually, around some of this. Because actually, if you look at collaboration, culture, connection, all of it, and compliance should be, and we'd be in trouble if not, should be really kind of front and centre to what we do. And I think we don't ever take that for granted, but there are times, and in fact I was on a call this morning, where actually sometimes, particularly that connection piece, does break down. And so you end up in a scenario where something that should be quite simple has simply just sort of been left by the wayside because of the millions of things that everybody's trying to deal with, and the competing priorities, whether that's my team with the kind of weight of regulatory change, or it's the business with, a couple of weeks ago we had a major rebrand, and that obviously creates a lot of successes and challenges alongside it. And so I think that then starts to impact the resilience accordingly. And so for us, what I'd say is, for us and for what I know about my peer firms, is that we have the positives around resilience of actually financial services in the UK has had several opportunities, unfortunately, over the last 15, 20 years to have that resilience to bounce back and make sure that all of those C's really count for something at a moment that matters. And obviously the biggest and most painful of those recently was during the COVID pandemic, and having to really kind of, in conjunction with the regulators, jump onto how is it that we're going to manage through this. But there are resilience challenges as well that are the kind of flip side of that. And we and some of our peers are held to a very high standard by our regulators. That's really challenging for people because nobody turns up not trying to do a good job. But if you having a difficult conversation with a regulator or a compliance person, nobody's ever enjoyed that. And so I think that resilience can sometimes be threatened as much by our own inability to kind of really stick to those 4 Cs as by anything else.
Which leads nicely to Niall. In such a umbrella type structure, maybe you can share with us in terms of actually getting that engagement on the front line. I mean, Phil's mentioned there about how that is a critical path towards success, but maybe you can share your views on how you do it at Petronas, and I suppose the challenges that obviously an organisation of your size does give.
Thanks, John, for the question. Before frontline, right? I'd like to add on to what Phil mentioned just now. So the key, when we talk about compliance resilience, to me, I decipher that as the organizations, the enterprise, especially large enterprise, they should be able to bounce back quickly, right? Because regulations are popping up everywhere. I feel in many organizations, in some instances, it happens to our organization as well, GRC professionals, GRC, whether it's chief compliance officer, chief risk officer, they should be able to sort of win or own the chief executive officer or the president of the organization. Mm-hmm. Because more often than not, the objectives or the mindsets are not necessarily always the same between CRO, CCO, and the CEO. The chief executive officer, they would have a bigger perspective, bigger considerations than, chief risk and chief compliance officer. Objectives are limited to making sure that, we are operating safely without any issues and being a good corporate citizens. Hence, to be able to have the CEOs and president of the entire group to be on your side, aligned, have the same mindset as the GRC practitioners, to me, is the key strategies. One of the key strategies in order for you to, maintain relevant. Okay. So that's it. And moving on to you mentioned about frontline employees, right?
Yep.
Multiple aspects, I feel. Number one is leadership commitment, definitely, tone from the top.
Yep.
Secondly, I think compliance officers, maybe a bit controversy. Compliance officers, let's not be a boring person. Because I think more often than not, that is the issue faced by the frontline employees. They don't want to talk to us.
Yeah.
And lastly, I feel is celebrate success. I would like to elaborate a little bit. Yeah. Leadership commitment. I think many of us in this room have children. I myself I have 4 children. I think many would agree if I say that if we talk and speak nicely to our children, eventually they would speak nicely as well to their peers, their friends, even other adults. So similarly in organization, the frontline employees, they're natural leaders, they're business unit heads. Hence, I feel sometimes the compliance officers, the compliance functions, we are quite too abrupt, too quick, sometimes sort of like jumping the gun to go to the frontline employees and impose our culture. Too quick to do that. Rather than that, I feel we should be targeting and winning the business unit heads first. Get their bosses, get their supervisors to be aligned with us, and eventually they will follow. You know, it's leading by examples. Mm-hmm. So rather than, if our aim is to make sure that the positive compliance culture pervasive throughout the organization, don't start with, immediately go to the front lines. Start with the business unit heads. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I mentioned about celebrating success. Or before that, the controversy one, don't be a boring compliance officer. People don't like to hear all the requirements, tasks to do, due diligence, you have to do this, you have to do that. Compliance function will be seen as stumble block, will be seen as a burden to them. Hence, I feel for organizations like Petronas, what we have been doing is we try to make our purpose, our functions quite interesting in order to communicate the new requirements, new controls. Sometimes we do, something fun like quizzes, quizzes for them to participate. We reward them, simple gifts. Sometimes we do road shows. We go to our subsidiaries, country to country. Physical engagements are always better than online interactions. And lastly, I feel this is quite common, quite straightforward, easy to understand, and agreeable by many. But I'm not too sure whether many organizations are actually doing this. Recognize the frontline. If there are frontline, find reasons to recognize, award, and reward the frontline employees if we know that they have been supportive of the compliance programs, compliance functions. Reward them, award them. Even better if we make them popular in the organization. Yeah. Make sure that their bosses, their supervisors are known that they have been supporting. They are the compliance functions. So eventually, over time, the front lines, I feel they would feel appreciated. They would feel recognized, and if that is consistent, I feel their peers will be replicating that as well. Yep. And over time, you would achieve the positive compliance culture.
And this might be a cheeky question, so forgive me, but in terms of where you think you are currently in terms of that success, because all of what you said, I'm sure everybody agrees with that principle of approach, but you have such a vast operation, and that is by filter down from that umbrella. Just a view of how successful do you think you've got with that? Is it, halfway there, you're 70% there, you think you're 80% there in terms of kind of like a relative theme? Because I think the theme for today is this is constant. It's not like you flip a switch, everybody high fives each other and says, that's it, we're done, So what's your view on that in terms of progress?
I'm looking straight at my Chief Compliance Officer.
I'll move my chair.
Thanks, John. To answer that question, I think let me put a disclaimer that I represent yesterday during our session with Michael Ramusen, I think the analogy was very great. He mentioned that one risk area is equivalent to a tree, but organization, when you want to manage risk, you want to thrive with risk, you need to manage, we have to look at a forest instead of individual trees. Mm-hmm. So where I come from, where the compliance function is, we currently oversees only 5 risk areas.
Yep.
Ethics integrity, data privacy, sanctions, export control, and competition. So within that area, I feel maybe 80%, 85%.
Okay. Yeah.
But other than those areas, I'm not too sure. And I think that is also where the source of issue, problems as well. We need to integrate and move as one function.
That's a good point of having the target that you're aiming for and the progress against that target, because at the end of the day, if you don't have the target, what are you aiming for, right? So thank you for that. That's been really fascinating. Sophie, from I suppose, bringing from, a different industry reflection on that, from your experience, anything that you would add to that in terms of the strategy of success, particularly when we're talking about the first-line handlers, that you would add from your own experience?
Yes, one thing that I would mention, and actually reflecting on this morning's conversation, I'm very surprised that I haven't heard this word pronounced yet, but maybe I missed that particular discussion, is sustainability. Yeah. So we talked about how GRC is all about bringing compliance, risk, audit together, and have a robust governance framework that stems from that. That is very similar to the practice of the sustainability function. Yeah. And sustainability and risk and compliance have got a lot of goals in common. We heard this morning about how a goals approach is really important in compliance and risk management, and I fully agree with that. Well, bringing this sustainability practice and lens, one thing that I find is really helpful, and I think is applicable to big, small, firm across all industry, is a systematic stakeholder engagement, following the guidance, the methodology brought by, for example, the Global Reporting Initiative, where you start by applying materiality lens to defining who are your stakeholders. Yep. And I'm sure my panelists will agree that in compliance, we have many, many stakeholders, right? Exactly. Sometimes to the point that it's a bit overwhelming and we don't know how to please them all. You mentioned the CEO, you mentioned the regulators, you mentioned the users of the transport system, right? This is therefore why I think having this systematic approach makes a difference, because you first go from a materiality lens. Once you've identified who are your material stakeholder, you have to spend a bit of time understanding where they define value, what they what value means for them. And then you designate like a coordinator or the accountable person to actually manage that relationship. So I think that really helps you deploy, your strategy, your force, your culture across different dimensions. But really importantly as well, when you do that work, you realize that at the heart of our profession, what drives us to work every day is that we want to protect our organization, right? Yeah. But when wanting to protect our organization, what that means as well is we want to protect our organization clients, yeah? Because if we don't drive good outcome for our clients, we're not protecting our organization. And therefore, we have a lot in common with the CEO or the front line, because they also want us to help them drive good outcome for their clients. And we have a lot of commonalities with our regulators, because they also want good customer outcome. So that would be what I would add. Just bring this sustainability lens and be very systematic with your stakeholder engagement.
Fantastic advice. Now, Peter, you mentioned in your opening statement that you have the ultimate cost on value of success or otherwise of your programs, which is human life, in terms of working in harsh environments and operating as such. What's your view in terms of then this is a cultural aspect of first-line people who are working in those harsh environments? What's your perspective in terms of making that work across your enterprise?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I would like to spin on Niall's input here on that we cannot send out compliance officers that think they are police officers, more or less.
Yeah.
And we have a certain challenge also in the Nordic countries. Even if we are in a dangerous business, we have a long tradition of trust in the culture,
Yep.
which is very good, of course, basically. It's very, very good. But that also means that in tradition, our policies is not so much on how to do certain things, it's more that things should be done, written, very summarized and so on. And the challenge here is that when we now want to fulfill like EU directions on how to implement a traffic management system for railways, etc., we have to be more detailed in both how we write certain things and how we do things and how we follow up. And we are not really there that, the Japanese culture, that efficiencies are good.
Yeah.
We need to have those compliance officers to be more in sales and marketing of compliance. Also be more, let's say, more obvious, integrate and connect compliance issues with our business processes.
Yeah.
And as you were into, also always repeat that this is about sustainability. This is about you, the company, and the customers, and
The environment.
and the environment, of course. We tend to forget that.
Mm-hmm.
We go out there, we do our job, we have our checklists and so on. We have to get away from that.
I think I keep hearing a kind of similar vein of different perspectives is that operation with a human capital. There's an element, we've talked about it already, about the carrot and the stick. It's come up in pretty much every conversation that we've had so far today. Moving, as we've always talked about, the automation element that has touched on pretty much all of the more future views of our industry. I'd like to try and kind of bring this back to your current experiences and potentially a future experience of where you're thinking of moving around AI, both what it looks like today and potentially where it goes to. Because I think I will share probably the anxiety from the room when we talk about how far we can go and what it looks like. There's probably many people sat there going, well, we're not there yet. That's kind of the sentiment from the room. So maybe I can start again with you, Peter, just to close out on that and pass it across to the rest of the panel. So your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, in our organization, AI and expert systems have been mainly used in construction and in the core businesses and so on. But I was impressed with the presentation this morning from one of the founders here about, I think, in the area of connected risks. Mm-hmm. We have seen several bad things happening in our surrounding, in our organization, that happened due to connected risks happening in a logical manner. So that is really an area we need to exploit even further.
So the interconnectedness and having technology take over some of the burden of that connectedness, but your business at the moment is currently using it for, I suppose, the more practical elements of AI around the infrastructure and implementation. Phil, can I pass that across the line to yourself?
Yeah, of course. So, and you did right. There's so many conversations about how we might use artificial intelligence and where could that take us. So, we're actually using this as one of our examples of contrary to what I said earlier about where sometimes we get complacent about things. We are being very humble about what we do not know on artificial intelligence, and so we are learning every day and in partnership with our first-line colleagues on this. So there is very little point in us both going off in completely different directions. Yeah. You learn your way, we'll learn ours, and then let's kind of come back together and challenge each other. Of course, you want to get some different perspectives along the way, but we're very much, as I say, on the pitch with the first line in understanding where do we want to go with this. Let's build an appetite around it, because why would we have needed one before? Yeah. And where's that take us? So, an example being, so recently we tried out strictly without customers. I'll badge this from the off just in case anybody gets too concerned. So let's say, John, you make a complaint into us about your overdraft because of a charge or something like that. And so we tried out with my broader team 2 examples. One complaint response was written by a human and one by AI. And you can tell where this is going. 80% of the respondents thought that the human written one was actually the AI one. So really well written, very not a particularly complex complaint, but still something that seems to take a lot of effort and that would have been mind-blowing 5 years ago. And so, as I say, we're learning very much on the pitch with our first line about how can we do this, how can we keep it safe, how can we protect our customers and the firm. The regulators are very interested in it, and that's where we are really kind of adding the value for the first line. So the bit that we're maybe separating ourselves from the pitch a little bit and a bit more on the sidelines is discussions with regulators, interpreting what they're saying. They are starting in the UK to publish more material about that. That will obviously help us to set our appetite. But by and large, it's very humble from us that we will learn with the business on this.
And Niall, same question for yourself.
I feel personally AI is generally companies, individuals. This is a personal view, not necessarily Petronas view. I feel we are overly concerned with AI.
Yeah.
I feel I would like to encourage everyone in this room today to just accept the fact that AI will be part of our lives now. Mm-hmm. Our organizations, our work, our personal lives, it will be part of us. So let's embrace that and accept that fact first.
Yep.
In terms of managing that, I feel instead of being too risk-averse and trying to mitigate all those risks, I'm kind of person who look into how then we move. The way forward is to invest in talents, invest in capabilities, which if we feel very strongly about all the tools and AI tools and solutions out there that are already available, then develop our own AI solutions. Have your own internal capabilities, because if we don't do that now, we will be left out, and sooner or later we'll be out of the market. Hence, start building your capabilities, your talents, in order to manage AI. Within Petronas itself, we already have AI Center of Excellence. It's one of our cultural belief: innovate now. So if if we push AI, so we are not living our Petronas cultural belief. So we embrace artificial intelligence. Yeah. We do have concerns with the usage of ChatGPT, for example. The organizations did contemplate whether to use or not to use ChatGPT, but the position as of now, instead of banning employees to use, because it's generative AI, right? Whatever you input, once ChatGPT OpenAI update the softwares, then information is out there.
Yes.
So what we have done so far, we did not yet ban ChatGPT, but as and when employees want to access ChatGPT, there's a page saying that the do's and the don'ts, the guidelines, you agree, you tick checkbox, and then only you can enter ChatGPT. So I think that I am in alignment with the kind of management of that risk. You do not completely push them away, run from there, but chill.
And Sophie, your view on the same from your experience thus far?
I would look at it in different ways. So first of all, as a smaller firm, where it's much harder to be at the forefront of innovation and actually be part of building new capabilities, right? And therefore, if you look at it as in either buyer or maker of AI, we are really much a buyer of AI at this stage, and I suppose to a certain extent as a as a compliance and risk professional, it makes my life slightly easier.
Yeah.
In terms of, why do we buy AI for? I suppose because we're institutional business only, in part. I would say that I see a lot more business cases in my world, in risk, compliance, governance, etc. But this will soon, I think, widen a lot more. And just like Phil, therefore, I have taken the initiative to start the conversation with the business around what is our risk appetite, what are the really looking at it as risk and opportunities, bringing again the risk practitioner lens to this conversation. Because just going around and talking about AI risks, I fear would have really not made me many friends, but would have probably stifled, innovation in the organization, which ultimately is not going to protect us for the future. So it's very much about what are the risks and opportunities, where do we want to position ourselves, what are the red lines that we can see. But ultimately, I suppose AI is about bringing human and machine, together, because the machine is looking a lot more like us.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
And I think that theme, we've got to embrace it. It's there. There's no, let's stick it in the corner and think about it next week. I think the notion is, it really goes back to what we were talking about in terms of disseminated information, is you've got to have a target, you've got to look at it in some form of lens, because otherwise the lens gets distorted and you look in different directions. And I think that's a risk in itself, because the fear of the unknown is almost greater, and that's in human race that tends to be the abject failure of making any sort of progress, because we feared it and we didn't quite understand it. So I think compartmentalizing it is absolutely essential. I think lots of food for thought there. I'm conscious of time, but I do think it's an interesting topic, and given your backgrounds, it'd be good to try and open it out to the floor for any questions before I summarise. But did anybody have any questions they want to throw across to our panellists? And I'm sure somebody will run at you very quickly with a microphone. If not, thanks, Simran. Faster, Simran, faster.
Thank you. My question and comment is to Sophie. We'll appreciate the fact you raised sustainability. I'm just curious to understand, how do you get sustainability into a compliance framework that becomes part of your organizational culture, and how do you make that an objective around your organization? Especially when it comes from the CEO level, what is sort of that relationship and his own or her own, I guess, vision for ESG/sustainability goals?
Yeah, I would say depends, right? And clearly the response to many questions will be depends. But certainly at GIB, our CEO, she has actually come to our organization with a vision to bring sustainability at the core of our strategy. And therefore, for me, it's been evident quite early in my journey with them that this is something that risk and compliance needed to support the organization with. To start with, it was a personal journey, because like many others, this is not what I had worked with or covered in my early professional years. So I've been, studying, I've been connecting, I've been engaging with the subject. But then very shortly after, the challenge was exactly how do I then, build a succession in that growth. And I think it's fair to say that we've all had sustainability objectives that were customized to what we do. So in compliance, it's been, for example, integrating sustainability in all our due diligence on clients, due diligence on counterparties, due diligence on vendors, and also providing all this advisory work for the business to be able to process and implement all this new sustainability regulation. in the financial services world, what I found was quite difficult for compliance officers is that they were very used to focus solely on the financial regulators, yeah? And there's already so much, to be fair, coming from, the PRA and the FCA in just one country, and then if you look at other markets, you then have, I think in the US they have 20 regulators. So there was already so much to digest that they were very much looking at that. And sustainability came another way, yeah? Sustainability came with governance, corporate disclosures, investor relations, and investments. So my challenge was to therefore get my team to widen their area of responsibility, of awareness, and bring it together. But just recently, actually, the situation is resolving itself, if you want. Not that I feel that I was unsuccessful. I think I was quite successful actually in that particular piece. But it is now coming through the financial services regulation, finally.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Was there a supplementary? Yes?
Yes, just a follow-on for now. This is to do with you talked about your compliance officers. So working for a global organization, I understand the challenge in empowering those compliance officers to at senior level or business unit directors. How do you ensure that sort of cascading happens and they are confident enough to have those conversations and be responsible within their leadership team amongst the therapists they operate in?
I actually have two compliance officers colleagues in this room. Maybe they can answer better. Please do Aaron, Sharina, Asnida if you want to. But I think it's a challenge that is faced as well in our organization. It's not something that is straightforward that we have and know that is the solution. No, because the way we design our compliance functions is it's within the corporate functions. Group at Ultimate Parent, there is a group of subject matter experts for ethics, integrity, sanctions, export control. They are not only subject matter experts for Petronas, they are also subject matter experts for our country, Malaysia, but they reside within Petronas. They are sometimes leveraged by our government as well. And then there is a strategy and planning unit, which where I come from. And this is the unit where there are almost none lawyers except one of our very own boss is a lawyer. Other than that, there are mathematicians, there are communications specialists, there are project management specialists, and then there's a group of compliance officers. So this group of compliance officers are the ones who communicate and speak directly with all our subsidiaries. Many of them are stationed in Malaysia in our HQ, and some of them are stationed in the UK here, in Dubai, and we have that challenge as well. The compliance officers sometimes, do I get to say what I feel, or should I be referring to the subject matter experts? Should I get the authority from the chief compliance officer as well? We do have that challenge as well. And I would like to invite Sharina to elaborate further as one of our compliance officers in the European region.
I'm sorry to jump in because I have an agenda and somebody's been flashing. I've got time up on here. As we have a break just now, would you like to have that conversation out over a coffee or a tea? That would be great. But thank you so much for everybody's time on the panel. That's been really, really a good conversation. And yes, I'll hand it back over to the team here to wrap up. Thank you very much.